Quick update for the Major League Baseball deadline, not only for the Giants, but all of baseball, and it was a crazy one. The Giants did the right thing in selling, but they didn't go far enough. Now, I'm not saying they should have been the Minnesota Twins and traded 10 players off their Major League roster, which I'm not sure that I've ever seen. Or have I ever seen the San Diego Padres trade 10 of their top 30 prospects in one day, including for Mason Miller. But you know my philosophy when it comes to trades. Yes, sometimes you're going to have a Fernando Tatis for a James Shields. Sometimes you're going to have a Zach Wheeler going out and a Carlos Beltran coming in. And so everybody gets afraid about those trades. But 9 times out of 10, if you get the best player, you're going to win the trade. A lot of times all these prospects, that's all they are. They're dartboard throws, and you just never know. So we'll get into the rest of the craziness of the day because a lot of players went to a lot of different places. But let's bottom line this for the Giants. 5 of the 6 wild card spots in the National League are spoken for unless there are major injuries. There are about 50 games to go left in the season. The National League East is going to be the Phillies or the Mets, and the other one's going to get the wild card. The National League Central is the Brewers and the Cubs, and the other one's going to get the other wild card. The Dodgers are winning the National League West, and the Padres are 6 games ahead of the Giants. Now, can you make that up in about 50 games? Yes, you can. But then the Padres went out, and although they may regret this, like they probably regret the Juan Soto from Washington trade, in which they gave up guys like James Wood and C.J. Abrams and Mackenzie Gore, they'd like to have those players right now. They just traded a bunch of top prospects to the A's, and good on the A's to trade a reliever when you're really, really bad. You don't really need a closer because what are you closing for? As far as the Giants are concerned, could they have gotten more for Camilo Doval? Everybody's screaming and yelling on the prospects that the Giants got for Camilo Doval. Your guess is as good as mine. Jesus Rodriguez, Parker Harbor, Tristan Verling. Everybody's screaming and yelling, you should have gotten the Mason Miller deal. You weren't getting a Mason Miller deal for Camilo Doval. You were getting Spencer Jones or some top prospect from the Yankees. Camilo Doval's not getting that. They didn't get quality. It looks like maybe they got quantity. As far as Tyler Rogers, some people think they got a better return for Tyler Rogers than they did Camilo Doval. Jose Butto, I know, is already in the major leagues. Blade, great name. Blade Tidwell. He sounds like he's a superhero. Blade Tidwell. Blade Tidwell is a guy who's been in the major leagues before, and Drew Gilbert is a guy that now that Mike Yastrzemski's gone, maybe he's your right fielder. Or maybe finally, it's time to find out what Luis Matos actually is. Is he a dreaded 4A player, or, like lots of Giants seem to think, all he needs is regular at-bats? I hate Bob Melvin. Well, we're going to see. Matos is probably going to get first shot at right field. Mike Yastrzemski, weird. I feel conflicted. It feels bittersweet. Do you realize he played 790 games in orange and black? And half the time you're screaming at him, half the time he makes a great catch, hasn't hit in 2 weeks, hits a home run to win games. He was a clutch guy at times. He was frustrating at times. His departure, I'm sure, for Giants fans is bittersweet. It opens up right field. Maybe it's Drew Gilbert, who they got from the Mets. Maybe it's finally Luis Matos. Maybe it's somebody else. But if you didn't like Mike Yastrzemski, your long-running nightmare is over. The only thing I would say to Buster Posey at the deadline is, and I know it takes 2 to tango, but Justin Verlander, he's got an expiring contract. I know he's 42 years old, but he's had, obviously, success in the playoffs. Even like a flyer, some kind of a flyer arm for Justin Verlander, I would have done that. You're not going anywhere. And as much as I like Robbie Ray, and I do, and I get it, he's got a year left on his contract. He's a solid number 2 starter. They're going to need that next year. Pitching will sign in San Francisco. Guys like Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, those guys are going to be free agents, and many more. So you can sign pitching in the offseason. They will come here. You could have found a number 2 starter in the offseason, traded Robbie Ray, gotten a pretty good return, and fortified one of the worst farm systems in baseball. Am I a baseball minor league system expert? No, I'm not. But do you know how I know it's not a good system? Because every time they turned to the minor league system this year, whether it be for a bat or a pitcher, they didn't come through. So if the system was that good, players out of that system would have helped the Giants this year, and they just didn't. And after the Devers trade, which I would trade 100 times out of 100, they lost any kind of major league pitching depth they had. So they don't have a good farm system If I'm Buster, I'm looking at said farm system saying, you know what? Once I traded Rodgers, it's on. Everybody outside of Adames, Devers, Chapman, Webb, those are the only guys really to me. And I don't like the word untouchable because everybody's tradable in all of sports. So there is no untouchables. But there's about 4 or 5 guys in the Giants that I would prefer not to trade. But outside of that, I would have traded Verlander. I would have traded Robbie Ray. It takes 2 to tango, and maybe they tried and they just couldn't get those deals. So if I'm the only criticism I have of Buster Posey is if I could have, I would have went even further than the Giants actually did. Bottom line, though, I know as a Giants fan, it's frustrating. Here you go again. It's reset time. Wait till next year. And every year it seems to be the same thing. They get off to this start. They give us, at some point during the first half of the season, a glimmer of hope. And it was even more than a glimmer of hope. Remember, when they acquired Rafael Devers, not that it's his fault, but when they acquired Rafael Devers on June 15th, they were 41-31. They were 2 games behind the Dodgers. Since that point, the Giants are 13-24. They were 2 games behind the Dodgers. They were the second wild card team. Now they're 6 games behind the Padres for the second wild card, and they can't even see the Dodgers. They're 9 games ahead of the Giants. So it's gone through the floor, and the Giants have to reset yet again. Check out the piece I wrote at JohnLundUnleashed.com. I've got all sorts of things and stats and all that for the players that the Giants acquired. Check that out at JohnLundUnleashed.com. Also, make sure you're subscribed to John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. Get those alerts on so you don't miss anything. And please, before you get out of here, hit us with a like.